Boys Chaos is back, and I am so excited to connect with you guys today. And I apologize for the way that I look, but you guys are just going to have to accept me for the way I am at this moment in life. I mean, I just came back from a walk and I was thinking a lot about how do I re-engage and reconnect with you guys. And I was thinking about going upstairs and getting all glammed up, but the reality of it is I don't have the energy nor the stamina to do all of that today. So you guys are going to have to take me for where I am. But I wanted to kind of reconnect to just let you guys know what's been going on with me. And there's been so many opportunities that I just wanted to shoot kind of like an ad hoc video because there's so much that's been going on around coronavirus, and I didn't want to beat you guys over the head. But from an HR perspective, I've had an amazing amount of learns, some stressful, some unstressful, around how I look at the workplace different. How do you manage through a crisis situation like this? But then what is the entire landscape of the work environment going to look like now that you have all of these people fundamentally working from home? So I apologize if you hear any noise in the background. Everyone, it is a beautiful day where I live, and everybody is outside cutting their grass and doing their yard work, you know, just for the spring and getting ready for the summer. So that's kind of all the noise that you hear in the background. It's been interesting, right? When you think about what has been essentially happening the last, 4 to 6 weeks in our country, but also in our work environments, we've all had to get used to a whole new normal. My children's school was closed the second week of March, and I have always worked remotely and traveled and gone into an office. So that new normal was just my everyday, but having to get adjusted to homeschooling children that are in kindergarten and also in fourth grade is a brand new territory that I was nowhere near prepared to do. And with my schedule and my husband's schedule, it has been extremely overwhelming on our household to try to manage all of those things. And I've had a lot of learns about myself, about my children, about my spouse, and we will talk about that at a later date. But the reason I wanted to get on here today, kind of unedited and unfiltered, is really around like, how do you manage a crisis and what do you do in a crisis situation? Whether that means your work environment, whether that means your home life, like all of it can be overwhelming. And I can tell you that I've probably cried every single day for the last 2 weeks straight, because you guys all know that I'm an HR leader for an organization, and my organization has been significantly impacted by the COVID-19, and I have never had to go through what I've gone through in the last several weeks in my career, but it has been a truly humbling experience. And on top of that, that means that I am working literally 7 days a week. Sometimes it feels like 24 hours a day. If I take my home life and my work life, I feel like I have not had a break. And today I had to get out because, one, it's beautiful, and I have not exercised in about 2 weeks, and I need to get out and like stretch my legs and clear my head. Outside of all of that, I had some self-reflection when I was walking, kind of like, do people really know what they need to do in a crisis situation? And of course, in the moment of you being thrown into things that has been extremely chaotic, you don't have time to slow down enough to say, okay, I should probably do step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4. But I realized through this experience so far that it is so critical that you do slow down enough to think about how do you want to deal with a particular crisis. And I know sometimes when you're triaging certain situations, you just don't have the time. But keeping some of these things at the top of your mind when you're trying to navigate some of these situations I found to be extremely helpful. And I've kind of started to implement these things, just trying to stay positive with everything that's going on. I mean, you're talking about, having to respond to employees losing 95% of our business. I mean, I had to this week furlough 135 people. And even though furloughing is not bad, because that essentially means you're going to get your job back in a certain period of time, but just knowing that every person doesn't have their life set up in a way that they can be without pay for 90 days. So, but because of our unemployment, them kind of making unemployment different, some people are going to actually be okay for the next 90 days. But what I realize is that we are so underprepared to deal with a crisis situation. And even when we go through it, there's just not learns that we take from that, so that the next time we go through a crisis, we approach it totally different. So for me, these are a couple things that I have learned in the course of the last few weeks in order to help keep me sane, trying to keep my family sane, trying to keep my team at work sane, because I have a large team that I have to manage every single day through this crisis situation. So the first thing that came to mind for me was that you have to slow down. Every single thing is not a crisis in a crisis, if that makes sense. You have to slow down to be able to critically think about the things that you may need in order to approach the situation the best way possible. But the only way that you can do that is if you do slow down. The other thing that I kind of learned was that it's going to be important to stay positive and grounded in your thinking. So you have to be able to stay positive and stay grounded. And staying positive isn't trying to not acknowledge that there is a crisis situation going down, but it's also being able to only control the things that you truly can control. And the things that you can't, you just got to let go. And there's no reason, if you think about it, if you to go with the woulda, coulda, shouldas, like there's no point to do that. So I have learned over the course of the last 3 weeks, like I can't go back and think about, well, I wish I would have done this, and what if this happened, and what if that happened? It's just not. There's no reason, right? If I put all of those things to the side for a second, the one thing I'm learning is I have to take care of myself. And that's the one thing I have not been doing in the last 3 weeks. I have been getting up super early to work, dealing with my job all day, trying to homeschool the kids, working late at night, and just going right to sleep, which has caused an immense amount of stress. So I haven't taken care of my body. I have been eating like crazy, drinking so much coffee, and I realize that my body is screaming to stop. My back is hurting, my knees are hurting. I'm not sleeping well. I'm not meditating. I'm not doing yoga. I'm just not doing anything because I have just been so overwhelmed. And I finally said, today is enough. I have to stop and I have to take care of my body. And that's why I just went for a 30-minute walk around my neighborhood today, because that's honestly all I could do. And the last two things I will leave you with is you have to have a trusted friend or a mentor that you can go and talk to, not to dump your problems on them, but to have somebody to vent through, to be able to talk through. And if you don't have that person, then it's okay. You can journal, because I believe sometimes in not dumping my problems on other people. So I try to journal in order to help. That's why it's important to do therapy. So a lot of therapists are doing a lot of remote sessions. So I would encourage you guys to be able to look into that. The last two things is that you have to disconnect. I know it feels like you can't, but you have to. You have to disconnect from everything that you're doing, whether it's your phone, whether it's your family, whether it's TV, whatever it is. You just have to turn certain things off. Stop watching the news. Sometimes it's okay to tell someone, like, I don't want to hear doom and gloom every day. Like, it's okay for you to say that. You have to protect yourself and your mental health. So learning how to disconnect. And the last thing I'll leave you with, which is the most important thing, you have to figure out what type of coping strategy that you need to deal with either staying from home, dealing with a crisis at work, dealing with stress at home. And that doesn't mean eating, drinking. Maybe it's something else. Because I will tell you, my coping has been eating. My coping has been having a glass of wine. And all I end up doing when I wake up the next day is feeling like stuffy and bloated and all these things. So now I've made the decision that I have to cut all of that out, and I'm going to have to start meditating again and stretching again. And it doesn't need to be, and I apologize because I just touched my face, but a bug just flew on my face. It doesn't have to be anything, super dramatic, but something that will allow you to deal with your stress. It's the most important thing to have a coping strategy. I'm going to try to re-engage with you guys as much as I can, but as I told you guys before, my life is a little bit chaotic right now with my having 2 kids at 2 different grade levels and development levels, home, trying to assist with homeschooling and having a demanding job and having to, do all of these other things. I'm going to try to do the best I can because there's so many things that I've written down that I've learned throughout this experience that I want to share with you guys. But I think the most thing I want to get in front of you guys is what are your employees' rights at an organization? Because I think a lot of employees think that they don't have as many rights as they do, but I also think that there is times where they don't realize that there are rights that they fundamentally don't have. And although morally it's wrong for what companies are doing, it's not illegal. So it was great to reconnect with you guys. I apologize for this tiny little barking dog, but I hope you guys are keeping yourself safe, stay at home, and wash your hands. Okay, bye-bye.